Okay, good morning, rather good afternoon. And I don't know who I'm speaking to, but I see you, sir. All right. Well, good afternoon. A little unorthodox setup here, but we'll do the best we can to present what we believe is a demonstration project that could be very easily developed in your county, city, community, because it made a difference for us in Brooklyn. Again, I'm Gregory Thomas, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Brooklyn. Now, I can tell, you could probably tell by my accent that I'm from Brooklyn, right? But most folks don't know enough about Brooklyn to know what we were up against as we started this project. So, as you know, there are 5 boroughs in New York City: Queens, which is also known as Queens County, the Bronx, known as Bronx County, Manhattan, officially known as New York County, Staten Island, officially known as Richmond County, and Brooklyn, which is known as Kings County. So Jeannie and I work for the Kings County District Attorney's Office in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is the largest of the boroughs with a population of over 2.7 million rather, in 2020. And as a native Brooklynite, still living there now, I felt that increase day by day. Certain parts of Brooklyn have changed over time. So for example, downtown Brooklyn, where we're located as an office, has changed overnight. You'll see a lot of more high-rise buildings now and co-ops being built, and I'm always curious to know, if they build it, will they come? And the answer is yes, if they build it, they do come. So the population is increasing every day. If we were counted as a city, Brooklyn would rank as the 3rd most populous city in the United States after Los Angeles and Chicago. That's a good trivia question. Ask that question to your friends and family, they won't know the answer. But number 3 is Brooklyn, based on size. So more about the work of our office. We are the 4th largest district attorney's office in the United States by virtue of size of population, caseload, and staffing. The average number of yearly arrest cases in our office is 55,000. As you can see, down from a peak of 93,000 in 2015. And when I started there in 2014, we were at 100,000 cases. I know Jeannie was there longer than I, and probably more than that as you started. But that decrease is not because we are, on the other side, having crime rise. We are arresting the right people for the right reason, right? So crime is going down, and so is our caseload. We have 23 police precincts, the NYPD does rather, in Brooklyn. There are 10 in northern Brooklyn and 13 in southern Brooklyn. And again, that's really based on where they're configured within the borough. And historically, unfortunately, Brooklyn North, or northern Brooklyn as it's called, has always had high spikes of crime. And some of that, a criminologist may tell you, is based on the density of population. Particularly, there are more public housing developments in northern Brooklyn than there are in southern Brooklyn, which by default, as you know, tends to lead to unfortunate spates of crime happening inside there. You can learn more about our office at our website, which is www.brooklyndA.org. I just dated myself. I should have just said brooklyndA.org, right?
That's okay.
I don't need you to laugh, my friend, okay, because I'm going through something. But thank you for coming again. But again, you can see more about our website, about what we're doing every day in Brooklyn. Let's talk about our homicide rate, and this is some more scope for you too. As you can see from the scale, we had, like many people in the country had, a spike of violent incidents during the pandemic. So we were at 100 homicides in 2019, and we spiked to 175 in 2020. That's a phenomenon that happened all around the country, more particularly in urban areas. So we don't know yet what that spike is attached to. People are thinking it's because of, for example, bail reform that happened around the country. People have attached it to that, but there's been no direct correlation found by researchers to say that that spike in crime was because of one incident in particular. It was because of a lot of things happening, but also the pandemic shutting down, as you know, schools and social places, what we take for granted every day, were being closed. Then that's where crime spiked. But it started going down in 2021, from 175 in 2020 to 150 in 2021, down to the current number in 2024 of last year of 120. And we're proud to say last year in Brooklyn, we had the safest year that Brooklyn had to date in recorded history because of the spike that had gone down to 120 with the help of the NYPD, our office and community partners. I want to make that clear. It's not one entity that reduces crime. I can say that proudly as a Brooklynite, but also as a person in the prosecutor's office. It's not us, it's not law enforcement, it's all of everybody working together in some vein to make sure that crime is reduced in your given city. We also had a reduction in shooting incidents, and I mentioned also the spike that happened in 2020. We were at 652 shooting incidents in 2020, up from 290 the year prior. So 400 more shooting incidents happened during the pandemic than they did the year prior, and then as you can see, it started going down again to the current number of 287 in 2024. Now, before I came up here, I wanted to make sure I got current for you. So as of this past Monday, according to the NYPD statistics, we have 68 homicides in Brooklyn. So the number last year was 287. We're at 68 homicides right now, year to date, in Brooklyn. And if this keeps the scale based on what I think happens around the country, summertime being the busiest time for law enforcement with shootings and unfortunate incidents like that, if we're at 68 now, it could trend to us being below 100. We hope, we pray, right? So again, it is a process where crime is going down in Brooklyn on a more regular basis. Now how did we get there, and what's the secret behind the recent decrease in violence? I mentioned earlier, a lot of things. This circle I created tells you more about what we believe was behind that decrease, and I was going to mention a couple of them too, so you can see it's in small circles form, but we focused on the crime drivers. We knew who the ones who were more likely to carry guns and then unfortunately shoot those guns. We knew who they were based on their prior history and based on great intel sharing. If you were able to attend the prior workshop on the gun violence partnership that was spoken about, that work went a long way too. Identifying those who were involved in shootings and who would carry guns would go a long way, which led to also law enforcement collaboration. We also advanced our data analytics. We have in my office the only standing fully robust data analytic lab. It's called the DEL. It's our digital evidence lab. So for example, in years past, when somebody needed to have a phone dumped, as they call it, or to look into the contents of a phone, you would have to go to the NYPD as a local authority to do that. Well, in my office now, for the last 4 or 5 years now, we have our own ability in-house to do that. So detectives can come to our office. We have analysts there who have certified, trained by federal agencies and others who are expert in it to now go into the phones ourselves and do the work that we need to be done on site with prosecutors involved in that research and also that phone dumping. So the digital evidence lab, as we call it, the DEL, was also helpful in that process. We invested in more technology and personnel, did more intelligence sharing, as I mentioned earlier. But the most important thing I think that got us where we need to be right now is 2 things. You see it here, it's strong community engagement and building trust. Key. We took a step here in Brooklyn as a prosecutor, Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez particularly, led this effort to, you'll hear more about it from my colleague Jeannie, to look at what we can do to change the scope of violence or the nature of violence or the expectation of violence, put it that way, in given communities in Brooklyn. We did that by first building trust. Before you do the work, you must have done the work. You can't do the work without having done the work. So by having an office that, again, the DA put together that has a unit that goes out to speak to community members every day, engaging with them, hearing what's on their mind about what they believe is a problem related to quality of life or crime or things that are uneasy for them, having that unit stood up ahead of time helped us as we started to then go to the next step of using community engagement to come up with a program that you'll hear more about in a second. I want to also, before I give it to Jeannie to talk more about it, we put together a report called Stop Violence, and some very intelligent, well-thinking people in my office came up with this acronym. So you see Stop Violence as the term, but they created this acronym called Strategic Team Operations to Prevent Violence through Intelligence, Organization, Law Enforcement, Neighborhood, and Community Engagement. That's clever. They found a way to get a word for each letter in Stop Violence. And that report, I have a copy with me, but what I'm also going to do is share with you an ability to download that through a QR code. If we were in a smaller room, I would have had it on the table. I'm going to make sure you have that QR code, but download it. You'll hear more about what we do in our office that's unorthodox as a prosecutor. Most prosecutors don't do this. They don't believe it's their job to help prevent crime. They believe their primary goal is to prosecute crime. Well, DA Gonzalez thinks otherwise, and we do that work every day in our office. So again, this report, which again I have the QR codes for up front, will give you more background. All this work led to what I'm going to pass on now to my colleague, Jeannie, a project called Project Restore Bedford-Stuyvesant. And as it says, it's what we were looking to do, to restore the faith that the community had in law enforcement, particularly, but more importantly, also helping them to reduce crime in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is a very strong community-based organization, rather community-based neighborhood in northern Brooklyn. So again, without further ado, I'll now pass it on to my colleague, Jeannie Lopez.
Thank you, Greg. Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As you all heard, my name is Jeannie Lopez-Melendez. I'm a prosecutor at the Brooklyn DA's office. I'm gonna date myself. I've been there for 26 years. I was like born and raised in that office. And you name it, I've done it. So I was a very traditional prosecutor, prosecuted an assortment of cases, everything from homicides to burglaries, anything you could think of, I've done it. Yeah, except violent criminal enterprise unit, I'm thinking about what I didn't do. But I work very collaboratively with the VCE unit in our office. So currently, I run all diversion programs in our office, including all diversionary work that's done with our youth. And thanks to DCGS, we received $2 million through a burn grant, and I'm very proud to say that I founded and started a unit called the Restorative Justice Unit in the DA's office. I believe, I've tried to do the research, but I think it's the only unit of its kind in any DA's office. And I hired someone who's special counsel to the office who is not a prosecutor. She is a lawyer, but she's always practiced in restorative processes, and her expertise is restorative justice, and we brought her on along, in addition to some social workers that I've hired in that unit, and analysts, but no prosecutors beside myself in the unit. And that was intentional and purposeful, because as my colleague Greg said, the DA, before when he was running for DA, he had people polling, different neighborhoods in Brooklyn, and what we found out very quickly was that the community did not trust law enforcement, and by extension, that meant the DA's office as well. There was a lack of communication, and DA Eric Gonzalez said, we're gonna change that. We're gonna make the work that we do transparent. And this office, as hard as it may be, because we get a lot of pushback from ADAs in our office, the DA said this office is going to try to weave restorative justice practices into every aspect of what is done in this office. Not an easy task, but we're on it. And I believe that we've made a lot of progress since 2017 in that aspect. So moving right along to Project Restore Bed-Stuy. So as Greg was saying, in 2020, it was chaos in New York City. I'm pretty sure it was all over New York State, all over the country due to COVID, but the shooting spiked in Brooklyn. And courts were closed. There was only like 180 emergencies, and a lot of people were getting out, unfortunately, committing shootings, and they weren't bail wasn't set, or we couldn't make 180 because no one would come to court and testify against these people. You could imagine, it was COVID, nobody wanted to come outside. And Brooklyn was like the Wild Wild West. And unfortunately, in Bedford-Stuyvesant area especially, there was two rival gangs that were warring at the time. And I mean, they were shooting each other every day, back and forth. And I'm gonna show you a little later a clip of how close these rival gangs lived to each other. And so, unfortunately, in July of 2020, I believe it was July 12, 2020, there was a shooting, one rival gang against the other in an area in Bed-Stuy. And 4 people were shot at that shooting. There was a barbecue going on, July 12, 2020. Families were finally coming outside, because of COVID. It was hot, and there was families out there barbecuing in a park, and the rival gang came to a location to shoot at the other rival gang. 4 people were shot at, and unfortunately, a 22-month-old child named DeVell Gardner was shot and killed during that incident. And pursuant to that incident, the NYPD was already investigating these 2 warring gangs, but that really put, the fire under the investigation. And pursuant to a lot of shooting that was happening and that murder of that baby, 2 gang takedowns were done in our office. I'll come back to that. 2 gang takedowns were done in our office in 2021 of those 2 warring gangs. 18 members of one gang were indicted, and 15 members of the other side of the gang were indicted. Right around the same time, I believe it was like 2 months apart. And the killing of DeVell Gardner was part of that indictment. And what happened immediately after that was the takedowns were done. The DA's office, Greg was part of that. The DA and his team created a letter that went out immediately. As the gang takedowns are happening, the letters are going out to all members of the community in the Bedford-Stuyvesant area. And the DA was telling these people, you just saw your young people being arrested out of NYCHA housing developments. You saw them be taken out in handcuffs, and unfortunately, those are the drivers of crime. We are targeting those people because we know that they're the 1% that are committing the shootings in Bed-Stuy. But unfortunately, we know as an office that we cannot prosecute our way out of this problem. We could arrest them as much as we want and prosecute them, and we do prosecute the drivers of crime, the ones that are killing people and shooting innocent victims. But what about the other gang members, the ones that are associated, that are part of it, and they may be possessing guns, but they're not committing the actual shootings? What about those people? We know that those people we have to help before we do indict them. So the DA told the community, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna have meetings with the community. Bring your young people, bring your clergy. NYPD was invited. Politicians that work in the Bedford-Stuyvesant area were also invited, and everybody came out. Unfortunately, I was not part of that yet because I wasn't doing this job yet, but Greg was. And a lot of people came out, and the DA said, you saw what happened. I don't want this to happen anymore. This hurts me as much as it hurts you, because for every person that we incarcerate, that incarceration hurts the community. They also have family, loved ones that are gonna miss them, and it impacts the entire community. We have to do something else. What can we do in this community of Bed-Stuy to prevent the next young generation of gang members to fill the void that just occurred pursuant to those takedowns? And resoundingly, what we heard was resources. We need money. We need jobs for these young men. We need a place for them to congregate. We need them to be employed, go to school. Resources, resources, resources. And so the DA's office collaborated with the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, and 3 other partners came in. These were like strategic planning committees, but the DA was intentional and purposeful when he chose these 3 other organizations, and I'm gonna name them quickly. One was Inside Circle. It is a group of formerly incarcerated men. They were founded in San Francisco, California, in Folsom Prison. And what that group was doing in prison was trying to quell gang violence in the prisons, and they used to run restorative healing circles. Now those formerly incarcerated men are now out, and they run restorative healing trauma circles throughout the country. So that was one of our partners. The second partner we had was academia. We knew that not only to make this program work, we needed it to be evaluated. And we brought Columbia University in to do the data and the research. But they also have a life skills program that they run in the city jails at Rikers Island. And we said, you know what, these life skills, these young men are gonna need it. So we brought them in to do the life skills portion of the programming as well. And then we hired another organization. It was a community-based organization that's entrenched in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. They've been around for 50 years. They know the community. They've worked with a lot of the young people that we were able to recruit for the program, and they just know what the issues are that affect Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn. And so we brought them in as partners as well, and they're called Bridge Street Development Corporation. And then it was a demonstration project, so thankfully, Mark J funded us for that program, and we were provided with $2.8 million. We learned along the way we needed a little bit more money, but, you know, now I'm gonna show you a little brief, it's 2 minutes, just about some participants and what they think of the program. My name is Jeannie Lopez-Melendez, and my title is Chief of Youth Empowerment and Community Solutions.
Project Restore has impacted me by showing me that it is much more than the 4-block radius that my housing development is laid out on. I was able to meet different people that was able to take me to places that I wouldn't have been able to get there by myself.
While they're in the program, you know, I start to watch the transformation. We also provide something that's called restorative justice circles, where they sit with their peers. I've gone to watch these circles, and I watch how they start to become vulnerable and talk about their past traumas, you know, and as the program goes on and I see the progression and I see the change, it gives me hope.
Project Restore gave me a different set of skills. It showed me that I didn't have to be one way to succeed in life. And it gave me leadership tools. What it did for my little brother was, instead of him seeing me as this way, as a bad, negative influence, he got to see me in a great way.
With their Project Restore, that we were able to fund an innovative way of not only prosecuting cases, but giving gang members a way out.
Project Restore is about trying to get to young gang members that have not pulled the trigger yet, who have not crossed the line yet, who are not indicted, to offer them a way out of the gang and to let them lead productive lives.
So I'm just gonna tell you how we found the next generation of gang members to participate in the program. So the NYPD and the DA's office collaboratively worked together to identify 15 gang members from each side. Now remember, some of them had already been formally incarcerated, and some of them we know possessed guns, but they were not yet trigger pullers, but they were like the next and upcoming ones. And we ID'd those people, and we gave the names to the community, to people that worked at Bridge Street, people that worked for Columbia, and other people that I hired, credible messengers and some mentors that were part of Project Restore. And we gave them the list, and we said, go find these people in your community. A lot of them they already knew, and you know, we told them, this is the deal. We want to work with these young men because they're next, and we know this, and we believe that this program can help them. And so most of them they found, and a lot of them said yes to participate in the program. Some of them unfortunately said no. And then some of the community members, because we were building trust, right? This was like a give and take between the DA's office and community. They provided me names as well. And they said, listen, you didn't have this guy on the list, but he needs it, and this is the reasons why. And we would vet that information, and then I would agree. I said, you know what, bring them in. And we were able to get 15 and 15 to agree to participate in the year-long program, because it was a year-long. And with full transparency, they knew that the DA's office was participating in the project. And at first, a lot of them were hesitant. I remember one of them saying, what? You know, I'm not giving you my information. But then when they quickly found out they were gonna be paid, because we paid them stipends throughout the year, they sang a different tune, right? So a lot of them, I'll get to that in a minute. A lot of them at first will tell you, like they told me, you know, we joined for the money. But then as the program went along, they tell us we were joining because we were learning who we are as people. It gave us a sense of purpose, and now I'm staying. So this right here, I'm just trying to give you a general picture of what was going on with the Hoolies is one gang and the 900 is the other gang. So this is Bedford-Stuyvesant area, and this is the area where the 900s are, and you see the the orange is the Hoolies. But up here, in that section where you see that big 900 and the Hoolie, those are two housing developments in Bed-Stuy, right? And I just want to show you how close they are in position to each other. So the ops are literally right across the street. Myrtle Avenue, if anybody's familiar with Brooklyn, right? That Myrtle Avenue is the only thing that separated those housing developments from each other. This is just a closer up of it. And so what was happening, I'm gonna show you in real time, what was happening through 2018 until 2021, but particularly in 2020, was that it didn't matter who was starting it or who finished it. Either the 900 would run across the street to the Roosevelt, the Hoolies housing development is called Roosevelt Houses. And this 900 one is Sumner and Tompkins houses. And so what would happen is, on any given day, either 900 would run into Hoolie territory, shoot up the whole courtyard, or shoot at anybody they saw out there, and then run back to their housing development, and vice versa. The Hoolies would do the same thing. And this was happening every day. There it is. So the devastation, this is when they were indicted. Just showing you, I said this earlier, 18 defendants were indicted from the Hoolies. But unfortunately, there was 4 homicides, 8 non-fatal shootings, 9 victims. And 5 of those victims were innocent bystanders, meaning they were not part of the gang rivalry in any way, shape, or form, and unfortunately was shot. And you'll see the age range, 16 to 31 years old were on their indictment. And the 900s, 15 were indicted from the 900. The age range, 15 years old to 25 years old, 12 incidents, 2 homicides, 10 non-fatal shootings, 10 victims, 12 victims in total, right? 10 non-fatal and 2 died. And out of that, 4 were innocent bystanders. This is just a shot of DeVille Gardner. That's the young baby I mentioned that was killed, unfortunately, on July 12th of 2020. Here is when the DA presented to the press and NYPD is present. That was the gang takedowns in 2021. That's the letter that I was talking about that was sent out immediately after the takedowns. And we still now, to this date, we send out a letter like this for every takedown that is happening. Immediately as the gang takedown is happening, those letters are going out to everyone in the community. So this is just the partners again, I'm reiterating, it was Mark J. They gave us the money, we're in the middle, we contracted with Columbia, Bridge Street, and Inside Circle. And Bridge Street, what they did was they paid out the stipends, they managed all the case managers involved, the mentors, and any credible messengers that we had working for us. They managed them and they paid them. So this was just the programming that was going on. So they received for a year long, the participants, wraparound services that consisted of case management, hyper-mentorship, restorative healing trauma circles, life skills, and we also had job placement, educational placement, and internships. And so 10 of those hours were for your either employment or educational placements and your internships, and the other 10 were your life skills, your case management, mentorship, and your healing trauma circles. And that group, Inside Circle, that I mentioned, the formerly incarcerated men, they're based out in California. And so we contracted with them, and they would come every Saturday they would fly out to Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and they would have healing circles with these young men. Obviously, all our programming was not done together, right? Because they were ops and they really hated each other over a beef that to this day, no one can tell me what the beef is about. So Inside Circle will come out here and run those circles for them every Saturday. So, I mean, that takes a lot of commitment from a group. That's why I love that group, Inside Circle. Oh, and before I go into personal progress, just to mention, you know, these two warring gangs, honestly, this was a generational beef. So I know someone was able to tell me that it went back to even the 1960s, right? But none of these young participants and none of the people that are associated with them that weren't in programming, I speak to them all the time. I speak to gang members every day, practically, and no one could tell me why this beef was. They just were taught from the moment they were born to hate each other, just because of where they lived. So here is a personal progress of the participants. So I will tell you, I still am in constant communication with all the graduates of Project Restore. And what I heard resoundingly from them was, before the program, I had no purpose. I would wake up, I was hated by everybody in my community. I would go outside and I didn't know what was gonna happen. I didn't know what I was gonna do for the day. I just knew I was gonna smoke weed or hang out with my friends, drink, and that's what I did every day. And if you could read this from up down there, but a lot of them said that Project Restore gave them a sense of purpose. They started to respect themselves. A lot of them were hated by members of the community, and as the program went on, the members in the community were looking at them differently because they saw the good things they were doing, right? They saw them busy, going to internships or going to school, working. We made them do a lot of community service in their community to try to repair some of the harm that they've caused. And they just saw that now these men were being polite, holding the door for people, not fighting, and most importantly, they weren't picking up guns and they weren't shooting. So also, I want to mention, as the program went on, both sides didn't know that we were working with the other side. And so, what's different about this program that I failed to mention earlier, with the DA's office being involved, is that, you're never going to really hear, I haven't heard until this, a prosecutor going into Bedford-Stuyvesant practically every day to be part of what was happening, right? Because it was me. I was out there because I wanted to be part of the transformation. I wanted to see the change. I wanted to see if it really worked. So you got to be in it to win it, right? So I also wanted to develop trust with these young men. And the only way you develop trust is to be there, present. We would have circles where I was included and I was considered government. And, they would throw things at me about what they don't like about government, and I would throw things at, we would talk about it in a healing way. But, that, I think, built trust. Those circles where we would have NYPD in there as well, from the precincts, from the 81st precinct and the 79th precinct. I got the NYPD to agree to meet with them and sit in restorative healing circles. And the NYPD became very vulnerable. They would say, listen, we're afraid of you guys. You guys are carrying guns, shooting each other like the Wild Wild West. We want to go home to our families. And, then they got to hear from the young men how they felt about NYPD. And these circles were done every other Saturday with NYPD and the young men in the program. And, what I found resoundingly is that trust was even being built between the 81st precinct and the 79th precinct and these young men. So that's that. What's happening here? Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the highs and lows. So we saw great transformation in these young men, but there were low points in this program throughout the year-long program. And one of them being, the first thing was 6 of the participants, I failed to mention this. Nobody started in that program with open cases. So we weren't making this like an ATI where you have an open case, come in this program, and then, we'll work out your case. No, some of them had records, but they had already done time in prison for past crimes. So nobody had an open case when they started in the program. We made that part of the condition because we wanted it to be a truly preventative program and not a normal ATI. And then during programming though, 6 of our participants were arrested for gun possession. So exactly what we're trying to avoid, they do. And it was 6 out of the 30. But I will tell you this, I ensured that all 6 stayed in the program. I had hard talks with the district attorney at the time, sometimes he didn't agree with me, but I'm very happy to say that he has allowed me a lot of discretion in dealing with these young men. He trusts what I'm doing. He also knows I've built relationships with them. So I went to him and I said, none of them can go to prison and we must all keep them in the program. And that's not easy to sell, right, to the district attorney who's trying to create public safety in his borough. But he let it happen, but he was like, we're gonna see how this works out. But it all worked out well in the end. But the reason that some of those young men picked up guns and were arrested, I'm trying to explain the context, not condoning what they did at all. But during the programming, there were 2 shootings that occurred. In September of 2023, 3 weeks apart from each other. So the 900, one of the gangs in the program, they were being shot at. not by the Hoolies, not by a rival gang who was also part of the program, but by a different gang that was not receiving any of like our services. And they had some beef with the 900, and they shot some 900, including one of our participants who had just came out of programming and he was paralyzed as a result of that shooting. But he continued on with us, thankfully. And then 3 weeks after that, in September, another shooting occurs. Again, at the Hoolies. It's the same gang from our intel. We found out it was the same gang, not the rival gang in the program, but another gang, shot at them again. And this time, one person was killed in that second shooting, and one of our participants was grazed in the foot at the time. Again, people coming out of programming and they're being shot at during drive-bys. So what we can thankfully say was that as a result of those shootings, no retaliation occurred because of those two shootings. We were scared, we'll admit, I was scared. I didn't know what was gonna happen. But what happened was, and as a result of the program, instead of the young guys just running out and retaliating, what they did was run to the people who they trusted the most, and that was the people in the program. So they were running to the members of Inside Circle. Inside Circle flew out immediately and stayed for a month and a half in Brooklyn. So all the men leaving their families in California, and they're staying out here with these men in Brooklyn, running circles every day. They ran to people at Columbia. They even were calling me, the gang members, and I was talking them through it. And because of that, because of Project Restore, there were no retaliations. We were able to prevent 5 direct retaliatory shootings because of Project Restore. We know that for a fact. As a result of the program, there's been, so I'm gonna give you some of the remarkable results, because to me, it's nothing short of remarkable. So as a result of the program, there's been no new shootings between the 900 and Hoolies to date. During the program, 3 of the leaders from each side, before I get to that, finally, one day during programming, one side tells me, you know, they call me Miss J. You know, Miss J, we're getting all these services and it's beautiful, but what about the other side? They need to get the same thing we're getting, because it's not gonna work if we're getting all this and they're not getting it. And I was like, you think so? And meanwhile, we're working with both sides and they don't know. And that takes a lot of work, because we had to plan it strategically. They met at different locations at different times. We would never let them pass each other in the street. So that's hard to do, but it was done throughout the entirety of the program. And then eventually we came together, all the stakeholders and the DA's office, and we decided that we needed to tell them, both sides, because the goal always was that we were gonna try to get both sides to at least sit down together and talk about, you know, what's been happening in their community and why they hate each other so much, and how can we resolve this. So we reached out to 3 of like the leaders that they were in the program, but we knew they were strong leaders in the gang from each side, and remarkably enough, 3 from each side agreed to sit down. They were not really, what did I do here? Did I turn this off? Okay. They were not really surprised that we were working with the other side, because I believe one time one side saw me with the other side somewhere in downtown Brooklyn, and I just act like I didn't see the other people. But so they kind of caught on that we were working with the other side, so they agreed to sit down. I was present for that sit down, and it was a healing circle. You know, at first, just the vibe I got when they walked into the room, I mean, they were mean mugging each other, and it was not pretty, but it was in a safe area, and I knew everybody had went through metal detectors, so I wasn't worried about anything happening. But I was just not getting a good vibe in the room. And so I was afraid that nothing good was gonna come out of it. But as the circle went on, I was surprisingly astounded, and they saw it very early on in the circle, that they had not differences. They had more in common than they did differences. They realized it. And they even started saying that to each other. And I remember one was like, telling one of the ops, you remind me of me. You think just like me. And, you know, they started talking about what their lives were like, and they have very similar upbringings. So, and nobody could articulate what the beef was about. That was another setting where no one could tell me what this was about. So, in that circle, what they decided was they were gonna meet once a month. First, those 3 gang members from each side, And then they decided they would bring more from even people who didn't participate in the program, just their friends that weren't part of Project Restore, they were bringing them in. And what they ended up, coming up with was, they call it a public safety working group, and it's still going on to this day. And they meet up through Zoom, because now it's gotten really big. They meet up every other week, members of the 900s and members of the Hoolies. And some of them are not graduates, because we can only take 30 total, but they just started bringing their friends in. And they talk about how they're gonna keep Bed-Stuy safe. They even talk about on it, like if they're having a current beef, like a younger person, a younger Hooli or 900, how we're gonna squash it. They made up their own rules about like respect, how to be vulnerable with each other, and it's continue on to this day. So this says we're currently seeking funding at the city, state, and federal level, and that's true. Shout out to DCGS. They did give us $2 million. I might have mentioned that earlier. And with that money, I did start my restorative justice unit. We are starting restorative justice circles with a lot of our cases at the DA's office. And also, we're currently, with that money, we did pre-programming, because now we're going out. It's gonna be called Project Restore Brownsville, but we're going out to Brownsville. We're already in Brownsville. But, so we did get funding. We went to the state, to DCGS, BJA grants, and then we begged New York City, and we finally got, just this past March, I wanna say, $3.3 million baselined into the DA's office budget for each fiscal year to conduct a year-long Project Restore in different neighborhoods in Brooklyn. And it started from 2025 to 2029. So I'm grateful for that, for the Office of Management and Budget. And City Council also did fund us another $2 million this year for Project Restore, and I'm going back next year to ask for that other $2 million again. So we're still continuing to support the public safety working groups, so they facilitate those groups online. We always have a member from my team at the DA's office also present to make sure that the facilitation is going well and that everyone's being respectful to one another. And we're also training the Project Restore graduates currently in restorative justice. So for instance, I just hired Roca to, if anybody's familiar with Roca, to come to our office, and they did a two-day training on CBT. And the majority of the people that were present for the training were Project Restore graduates and some people from my team at the DA's office. And also community members that's from CMS groups that are doing the work with these young men and other gang members in Brooklyn. I just mentioned the funding, okay. Another thing I want to talk about this year-long program, like the magic behind it. You know, there was 30 participants. Out of those 30, a third of them, 10 of them are enrolled in college currently. One of them at Columbia University. And what's it when you get the 4.0? What is that, cum laude, sigma cum? Whatever. 4.0 average. That's amazing. And this is a young man. He was one of the men you heard speak in the beginning in the video. He was a young man who did not leave the four corners, like 4 blocks radius of where he was born and raised, because he was afraid to. Could you imagine? Like, he's living in prison in his own neighborhood, and now he's at Columbia University. So, and after that, we just enrolled 4 more PRB graduates into college for this semester. So that's 14 out of 30 that are currently enrolled in college. Some of them we found job opportunities for. Others are, everyone's employed currently. And what we learned from this is that it wasn't just a year-long project, right? So when it was over, what we did learn is there has to be a wind-down process. You still have to work with them. You know, not as intensely as you did during the year, but just make sure that they're, you know, we're providing the services that they need. And these are young men that didn't even have licenses, IDs. I was able to get a truck, I forgot what the name of the truck was, to come in to Bedford-Stuyvesant and get all the information that they could. A lot of them didn't have birth certificates, social security cards, but we made sure that all 30 of them at the end had ID. We showed them how to open bank accounts. Just basic things that we do every day, these young men did not have. So this is just if you want more information about Project Restore. You just, the QR code, use it, put in your information, and we'll email you some information. And if you're interested in reading the report that Columbia University wrote, which is very, very interesting, we have it up here. We thought we were gonna be down here, but it's up here. We'll bring it down so you can, if you're interested, you know, scan the QR code and you can read the evaluation. What I will say about Project Restore is I've been a prosecutor for 26 years, and this is the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my career as a lawyer. I'm very proud of it. It is very innovative. I know it's not our traditional way of thinking what prosecutors should be doing, but I will say that I believe that this program such as this creates more public safety than locking anyone up and sending them to prison. And this is a career prosecutor saying that. I say that because I'm seeing the results. These young men are now pillars of their community. They are learning about restorative justice practices. They're taking it out to their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, friends. They're facilitating circles in their community, and it's all led by them. What I've realized is that we create more public safety as a public safety office when we collaborate with community, not dictate to them what should be done in their community, but go out to them and ask them, what do you think needs to be done so that we can be of service to you? We have a lot of money coming in. Any other money is great. I'm grateful for any other money I receive, and we're gonna go out there and keep doing more Project Restores throughout Brooklyn. Thanks.
I just wanted to add one thing before we take questions. As Jeannie mentioned at the outset, one important part of this was the DA thinking that we could not do what we used to do or what we all do in law enforcement, right? You make this big arrest, and then it's a press conference and it's on the news and it's in the local headlines, and people are sitting back and asking, what the hell just happened, right? So what the DA did, and I think you could do this very easily in your communities too, is first of all, identify your local stakeholders, those people who are the town criers, those people who are most likely to be the ones to carry the right message for you. Identify them first, always have them in your database, as I said before, doing the work before you do the work. Once you make that arrest, and when it's properly legal to make the announcement, that letter that Jeannie referred to went out to those stakeholders right away. Phone calls are made to them right away. So contrary to what you hear, what you may have thought has happened, this is what actually happened. This is who we arrested. This is the ones we arrested. We arrested the ones who shot that young boy. I was there the morning when he was shot. I mean, it was devastating, right? So to let the neighborhood know that we have been looking for that person all along, we finally arrested them, rather than the story being told about, there goes law enforcement again, arresting 45 people for no reason, and then the story that they're telling is the one that gets out rather than the one that should be told. That letter going out helps a lot. Within that letter, he also said, DA Gonzalez also said, I want to meet with you to hear what we could do to make sure that that next void that Jeannie mentioned is not filled by the young men or young girls, in this case sometimes too, that you know are sitting back and wait to do the next crimes. You know who they are. I need you to tell me what to do next. So as we started this process in Bed-Stuy, and I was fortunate enough to lead those meetings, I did a lot of listening. We didn't go in there with, hi, we're from government, we're here to help. They've heard that before. They want to hear, what do you have to offer us to help ourselves? And we did that. Very challenging work because, again, it was us hearing, as Jeannie mentioned, a lot of tension from the community. And I'm, again, born and raised in Brooklyn, still live there now. I felt the tension. I know what it's all about. So hearing that was not easy. Once we heard it, we had to document it and then take action to give them what they wanted, which resulted in Project Restore. So are there any questions? Please. You got it? You want mine? Come down there.
No problem. Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Seabury. I'm with the Albany County District Attorney's Office. I guess I have like maybe 2 or 3 points. I was at a different convention, I think maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and it went more in depth into the story that you guys showed there with the 2 rival gangs. Very, very impactful, very powerful. Probably my favorite, thing that was there at that workshop. And I think it really highlights the importance of, the project that you guys have, because like they went in more in depth of how, they were rivals, they literally hated each other, everything that you said, and the fact that you were able to create an opportunity for them to, come together and harmonize and get, lash out what they had to lash out. That was incredible. And also, I don't know, because I stepped out for a little bit if you mentioned, but they also went through real life issues. Like I think in one of the stories, one of their fathers died, I think at the time. And that was just like, yeah, exactly. And that was something that like, that's regular issues that they're dealing with on top of already their issues that they're dealing with. So I just wanted to highlight that. If you guys didn't see it, it's amazing. But my second question, or my second point is, like I said, I'm from the Albany County District Attorney's Office, and as of last year, we started a restorative justice unit. So your works have definitely spread out to upstate New York as well. So I guess my question is, what makes up your staff for restorative justice unit? Because I know you mentioned social workers too, which we don't have for that. So I just want to know what.
Yes, so we have no prosecutors except for myself. I run the unit. We have 3 social workers on staff. We have, I have like an analyst working for me, one paralegal, and then the director, she is a lawyer, but she's not a prosecutor. Her name is Lynn Eckenberg. She came from the restorative justice, world. She has tons of knowledge on restorative processes and restorative justice circles, and so we brought her in to work in our office. She runs trainings in our office where we're training the ADAs on a protocol that we came up with, and they should be using this protocol to identify cases that they believe should come to the restorative justice unit for restorative justice practices. But I don't rely on my ADAs because I get a lot of pushback sometimes, unfortunately, from ADAs in my office. So I developed a tracker in my system too, my IT system, and I'm able to track cases immediately based on certain criteria that we put in the tracker.
Okay, thank you. That's very informative. And then I guess my last point is I'm upstate right now, but I am from Queens, New York. Not to take the shine away from Brooklyn, but if you need some good soul food, man, there's a spot called Seamoran, family business. Just support it a little bit now. SEAMORHEN. Look it up. We'll hook you up, man.
In Queens?
In Queens, New York.
Okay. Right,
thank you, though. Thank you, guys. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Yes. Where was that training? I mean, that where you saw them speak about Project Restore? Was that Maryland?
It was the Hilton in Albany.
Oh, in Albany.
Yeah, at the Hilton Hotel. It's like maybe 5 minutes away.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
And we have these little tents that we thought, again, would be used in a smaller room where you could scan it to get a copy of the Columbia University evaluation, which, again, you should read that because it is very telling and revealing about the work we did, but also that Stop Violence report that I referred to is also available through scans. I'm going to walk these down to the lower level if you want to get a copy of those. Thank you.